Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
Oh, indeed. Let's not miss our moment. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hamilton Corner. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, host of the program, joined by the producer extraordinaire, often imitated but never duplicated, the real J Mac. Y'all heard that out there, the real. Not all of these imitators. I'm telling you, man, since I feel like since we've been calling you J Mac, they got a whole bunch of other people that trying to be called J Mac. Like, you know, the dude on Colin Cowherd. Like, hold up. That boy's name is Jason. You better call him Jason. You know what I mean? Anyway, at this very moment, many of you, if not most of you, are making your transition from your part-time jobs where you generate an income to your full-time jobs where you and we all do it. We cultivate an outcome. And as you do so, I want to remind you to do so with intentionality, understanding the primacy that God places on family. Man, I got so many thoughts going through my mind at the moment. You know, took some time to digest the State of the Union address. You know, I feel like the State of the Union address it included, obviously, President Trump's remarks, but all of the histrionics. You got, you know, Joyless Reed with her People's State of the Union. It's just, I think all of it really is indicative of, I won't say the comprehensive population of our country. Let me say that better. I don't mean every single person in the nation is represented by that, but some of the most influential sectors of our society was represented in this address, including the shenanigans and tomfoolery in the audience. Some of the things that did not go addressed, you know. But anyway, before I get into all of that, I remind you about your full-time job, and which is also my full-time job, with regularity, because we have to. And I know it may sound like, you know, I'm DJ Jazzy Jeff with my repetitious mixes concerning making disciples. But guys, the only way forward for our nation is through proclaiming the Lord's gospel and making disciples. That's the only way. That's the only way. And the more we seek to find alternative investments and to pour ourselves into other areas without attending to the disciple making function, that we are setting ourselves up for disappointment, sure, but we create room for the types of things that we're witnessing on the national stage. I've said it repeatedly. I will continue to say it. I am grateful for people on the front lines. I'm grateful for having a man who I respect, who I personally know is a brother in the faith, as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And I know people have all kinds of things they want to say. I know that to be true personally, you know. But if we have all of the offices manned by people that we appreciate and respect, but we are not making disciples within our nation's populace, we are going to continue to see what we have seen. I mean, we often say it in passing. I've said it in passing, things like, you know, JFK couldn't get elected in today's Democrat Party. Guys, it's a fact that Marxists have overthrown the Democrat Party. That's a fact. That's why you had Abigail Spanberger, who campaigned as a moderate, who's governing as a Marxist, to do the response. That's why you have the New York City Islamunist as mayor, you know, and you have this. It's so laughable. When I saw that, I was almost speechless for about 30 seconds. And what I'm talking about, I saw that Mamdani invited emergency snow shovelers. I'm kidding you not. And the emergency snow shovelers had to show several forms of identification to shovel snow, Jeff. They had to have 2 photos, 2 versions of official ID, and a social security card to shovel snow in New York City. And some of these same folks, because he's a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. That's the political affiliation that Momdomnist has. And the DSA opposes voter ID. Now think about that. You got to have ID to shovel snow. But you don't. Nah, we don't want you to have an ID to vote. Now somebody square that circle for me. This is why, guys, to the word we go. To the word of God we go. Because you cannot make sense of this insanity. It is beyond logic. The brother Abdu Murray coined the phrase a post-truth culture. We are far afield from postmodernism. That ship has sailed. When you have people who will endorse and support identification being required to shovel snow, but the same people will not support voter identification to vote, is because they want to make it easier to cheat during the vote, and they are no longer ashamed to say that publicly. To the word of God we go. Matthew chapter 5, man. Verses 13 through 16. This is a part of Jesus' longest recorded sermon, the Sermon on the Mount, and he says this: "You are the salt of the earth. If the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." The Father's glory is the objective of our salt and light duty. The Father's glory. The Father's glory and seeing the eternal family of God expanded as individual image bearers surrender themselves to Him in faith and repentance and experience regeneration. The Father is glorified as these people who have been born again by the power of the Spirit of God their eyes are opened to the transcendent value of living surrendered lives, living lives of surrender. I've explained numerous times on this show, and this is just one aspect of my life, but I never sought to be on the radio. I never sought a microphone. So I was speaking at an event and a child asked, what do you do to get into radio? No, what did you do to get into radio was the question. And I said, honestly, I can't answer that question because I didn't do anything to get into radio. What I found to be the most effective life advice is to obey the Lord's leading. If you've been listening to this show or watching the show for any length of time, you know my testimony in this regard, that I didn't join the American Family Association to do anything on the radio. The only thing at that time I sensed the Lord leading me toward was when AFA's president informed me that their general counsel was preparing to retire, and they wanted me to be the replacement for the outgoing general counsel. My agreement was solely to do the legal work that I still continue to do now behind the scenes. That was the only thing I was agreeing to do. But because God is smarter than we are, wiser than we are, because he knows the end of a thing from the beginning, he knew that his plan was for me to be right here behind this microphone right now. I didn't know that. But what I did know is that the God that I had entrusted my eternity to, and with whom I was blessed to cultivate a relationship with, was worthy of being trusted with my life's direction. That's what I did know. And what an adventure it has been following the Lord. Similar things have occurred that led to me meeting my life partner, my wife, my best friend. Which drives me to this, the first verse that we read. If the salt has lost its savor, man, what is it good for? What is it good for? We have too much of the professing body of Christ chasing the acclaim, the approval of the world. And it's a fool's errand, because the world will only accept you on its terms. To say it differently, the world only accepts worldliness. Why isn't it enough to be peculiar? What is it about Christ that makes him unworthy of following, even when it makes us unpopular? With the broad road, instead of being salt and light, man, we've largely become lightly salted. We're trying to outworld the world. We're trying to out-entertain the world. We really feel good about ourselves when the world recognizes our acclaim. You know, it's kind of like the Christians wanting a Grammy, you know, and I understand that the Grammy Awards represent kind of the zenith of accomplishment for music. But why do we care? Why do you care so much? And I'm not trying to be like a fuddy-duddy. Everybody enjoys being appreciated, especially if you have a skill or a profession or something you've worked at. You know, I enjoy thoroughly seeing people execute something they've dedicated themselves to for their entire lives. Some things more than others. We just had the Olympics. Somebody will have to explain to me how curling became an Olympic sport. Because if you ask me what it is, you know, you're rolling the ball up. We played Cool Can in New Orleans. It's called Cool Can. We ain't know nothing about cricket. Really, Cool Can really is just cricket. But they're using, they call them things the stones, rolling on the ice. And then they're using the Swiffer dusters. So you could Swiffer faster. You know, so that's not one I appreciate. You know, and then the luge. What is the luge? You just, I call that nap time where I'm from. You know, who can get the best nap posture? That's an Olympic sport, so that's not included. But man, being able to see like skiers or whatever, I appreciate people who have a skill that they've dedicated themselves to shows the exercise of self-discipline, seeking to maximize their talent to accomplish different things. So I understand that people enjoy being appreciated for different things, but I'm talking about for us as believers. Why do we care? Why do we care if the world thinks we're great? Why? And this is not the case universally. I'm not saying I know everybody's hearts, everybody's minds, but often that is the case because we think little of Jesus. Jesus' approval is not enough. And I'm thinking about this, the salt losing its savor. The consistent effort to cast off our American system of government is because, as John Adams said, our nation's constitution is only adequate for religious and moral people. The religion John Adams was talking about was Christianity. Our constitutional form of government is wholly inadequate for the governance of any other. What we see tumbling around us, guys, is simply the revelation of the necessity for the gospel to be propounded once again in power in our nation. And in the next coming weeks, I'm going to share some things. I won't do it today, but I'm going to share some things simply calling on our nation for a time of prayer and fasting, because repentance is our most desperate need.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildman and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started continues today as AFA fights the attack against truth and righteousness. Watch Culture Warrior and join the fight. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Shining light into the darkness, this is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner. Abraham Hamilton III here. I was just reflecting on the State of the Union address, and President Trump appropriately highlighted quite pointedly the insanity that's present in the Democrat Party. And he did it. It was right for him to do so. It doesn't matter. I've said it before, but President Trump can cure cancer, and people will say, "Oh, President Trump's cancer elimination strategy is a problem." It's crazy. They want to acknowledge the reduction in inflation and the strength of the stock market, and I understand the stock market is not the economy, and we should never conflate the stock market with the economy, but it is an economic factor. It is a factor that should be considered, but we have to come to grips with some things that are just, they are signs of the difficulty of our times. Like, how do we have we wrestled with the fact that we have people like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar in our Congress? That is just wild. I mean, these people are radicals, and I believe that they are at a minimum, I would say, demonically charged. I mean, Rashida Tlaib. Am I tripping, or was she wearing watermelon earrings, which indicated her solidarity with the terrorists in Gaza? Like Hamas. She's wearing watermelon earrings in solidarity with these people. And it is documented evidence that these people murdered babies and old people and raped, used rape as a tactic. I'm not struggling to communicate necessarily. I'm struggling to be very careful in what I say, because this is our National Congress, and I get it. Like, people will say, "Well, Abe, I'm not from the district that elected her," and I'm not, but she has been elected, and her involvement in our Congress affects all of us. You have Ilhan Omar, who has stated that she's in Congress to advocate for the interests of Somalia. Think about that. And just a couple weeks ago, when you had the hearing on the rise of Sharia in America, and you had we referred to the Muslim Brotherhood document that says they want that the Muslim Brotherhood intends to use our own legal system against us. You have, predictable, Democrat regressives being thrown out of the State of the Union. Even after you had everything that happened previously, you still Still going to put on that show. And there's been a degradation of our Congress, to political theater, man. It's political theater. It is political theater. So President Trump's broadside against these regressives was appropriate. But in addition to things that were done and said that were problematic, did you also notice that President Trump didn't say anything about abortion? You'll recall in his first administration that he repeatedly described himself as the most pro-life president in American history. Have you noticed none of that talk is happening these days? And guys, and I understand. I know about political expediency and all of these things. And I also am one. I understand that President Trump has his own ideology. He is not a constitutionalist, as I would describe it. He's more of a pragmatic populist. I get that. But for the status of our country, because this is a State of the Union address, it's interesting to me that while you have the histrionics going on in the audience, the Republican president is speaking, but there's no conversation concerning the protection of innocent human life. None. I understand it's not politically expedient to talk about this. But what we have in this binary generally in our country. We have the Democrat Party that has been taken over. We could talk about the history. There used to be a Communist Party USA. It still exists, but many of its former members simply have become Democrats. And then you have the Republican Party largely that enjoys playing the role of spunky minority party. It's this Taylor's oldest time when the Republicans are the majority in the Senate. They don't really do much, but they make red meat conservative speeches and campaign for elections, but they don't really do anything. Like the whole idea of requiring the filibuster rule to be tweaked ever so slightly to require any U.S. senator that wants to filibuster a measure or a vote that you actually have to be physically present in the Senate chamber and speak. Do you see that as a high bar? Jeff, do you see that as a high bar? Like, if you're going to do a filibuster, you have to actually be in the Senate and talk. But what we have, and they call it a fake filibuster. I can't really even call it a fake filibuster. You just got what we have now. We have the filibuster email. And so the way the filibuster email works is, well, I don't like this measure. I don't like this vote. I'm going to send my email. I'm going to send my text message and tell everybody I don't like this and I don't want us to vote on it. So filibuster. And then you go to the Hamptons. In the entire business of the Senate as it applies to this measure, it doesn't allow to go forward. And here's the thing. The email filibuster or the text message filibuster will allow the Senate to go do other stuff. See, the whole point of the filibuster of the once most deliberative body in the nation was that the business of the Senate has to stop because this measure is so important that this senator has taken it upon themselves to stop the business of the Senate, to require the entire body to give attention to the remarks as poignant and pertinent and important as they are, because we cannot allow any other business to take place because this matter is so important. Everything must stop and I must be heard on this. But with the fake filibuster, the email filibuster, the text message filibuster, I'm gonna text my filibuster on this. We can do other stuff. We can don't go do other stuff. But we're not going to do anything on this bill. Guys, I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of the government shutdowns. That's the predictable government shutdowns. You pass a 9-month continuing resolution. You know you're not going to pass a whole budget. You have this political posturing, all these things going on over and over and over again. I'm just tired of it, man. I'm just tired of it. And then we have a populace that has been intentionally deprived of civics education. We have a populace that has been intentionally deprived of reasoning and logic and understanding. We have a populace that is largely intentionally deprived of study in history, intentionally deprived of any conversant understanding in economics. And it just has tenderized us and made us pliable, made us passable, made us weak. It's made us weak. And so you have these predictable shenanigans during the State of the Union address. I mean, the whole idea of wanting to conduct yourself in such a manner to where our nation is respected by our citizens, to where our nation is respected around the world. And I'm not laying the blame of this on any particular individuals. You know, but I personally remember, I'm not as old as some people, but I personally remember it was a big deal to continue to talk about how, you know, Bill Clinton, for example, demeaned the office of the presidency, degraded the office of the presidency, you know, and it's a sickening phenomenon to where it's not where we are. And y'all know I'm an equal opportunity truth teller. There have been things that President Trump has said, and I was just like, man, what? And I understand the reality of the moment. I understand that we're at a place where the nation appreciates plain spokenness and a willingness to be direct, and frankly, a willingness to refuse political correctness. But at the same time, while we're refusing political correctness, don't tell me that, you know, you're asking about the Epstein files and, oh, who's still talking about that? Nobody's still talking about that when you know people are talking about it. I'm just sick of it all, man. I'm sick of it all. I'm sick of the two-tier justice system. I'm sick of these people, you know, they want to cry racism all day long about, you know, who knows what, but won't even raise a finger to recognize, you know, it's racist to force children born into neighborhoods to go to schools where the children ain't even learning to read, but you still going to make them go there so that the teachers unions can keep getting money. You know, like, I mean, come on, man, I'm from a city and people know, largely speaking, in my city, there are only a few public schools where you can go to get a decent shot at learning. But the majority of the people, if they could, they would send their children to private schools. And in most places around the country, that's the same thing. The same is true. But we're going to keep a system in place when we know our populace is illiterate, when we know we have 8th graders that are not even proficient at history, when we have children that are not even proficient in civics education, when we have children that don't even know how to read, and we spend more money per student on education than any other nation in the world. And we're going to just keep that going in the name of what? And I'm just sick of it, man. I'm sick of it. You got all these people, these apologists, and I watch them because I try to keep up with what's being spoken. They'll say it's a problem because we need people to prove their citizenship to register to vote in our country. If you're so certain, and this is how you know this is a lie, guys, if you're so confident that people are not voting illegally in our elections, why do you care if we require them to prove their citizenship to register? That's because deep down you know it's true. And you want to use like provocative language. This is a return to Jim Crow. Because you know your position is flawed on the merits. So you want to make up an alternative emotional appeal to get people to agree with you against their own benefit. And just Nancy Pelosi tearing up the speech, President Trump's speech in his first term. Remember that? But if you really pay attention, you zoom out. Congress doesn't hardly pass any bills in the first place. Not anything substantive. The majority of the stuff they're passing, some does have the street being renamed, and so is having this little thing going on. But you don't even have a bunch of bills getting passed. But you have these little convenient exclusions, you know, like we'll pass an Obamacare, but we'll exempt the Congress from Obamacare and its requirements, of course. We have a government shutdown and federal employees don't get paid, but Congress still gets paid. The American people are tired of it, man. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. But as I'm describing being tired of it, you know, one of the unspoken realities that's contributing to all of the shenanigans? It's a professing church that's lost its savor. Over time, we have conducted ourselves in a way that has led to a diminished significance within our societies. And I'm not trying to place the whole of the blame in this manner, but we need to be honest about it. But the beautiful thing, man, about the grace of God and the mercy of our God is that we can turn. We can change course. You know, people often refer to the 2 Chronicles 7:14 scripture, referring to the people of God. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and repent and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven. Then I will heal their land. The turn must happen within the family of God first. It is a contracting bride of Christ in our nation that has led room for the ever so slight encroachments to occur. And those ever so slight encroachments compile over time. They accumulate over time. To now we have the watermelon earring wearing Rashida Tlaib in our Congress. But if we'll turn, man, there's no question as to what can be done in our society. But it has to start in our homes, with our families. It has to start with us. Lord, help us to see and understand the time that we're in.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildman and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started continues today as AFA fights the attack against truth and righteousness. Watch Culture Warrior and join the fight. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
The Hamilton Corner podcast and 1-minute commentaries are available at afr.net. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner. Abraham Hamilton III here. I've been announcing this and because we are rapidly approaching. It'll be here before you know it. That's number 3. Well, it'll be here before you know it. March 27th through the 29th. I will be ministering at the Kingdom Come Conference at Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which is, as I've been mentioning, the church that was founded by the late D. James Kennedy. And some of the people I'm looking forward to hearing at this conference include, obviously, our friend and brother Bill Federer, Rosaria Butterfield. I've never had the chance to hear her in person. I'm looking forward to that. Oz Guinness, a tremendous thinker and writer, and just those are just some of the people that'll be there, and I will be speaking at the conference as well. That is March 27th through 29th. Looking forward to that. If you're in the area, willing to come to the area, this will be a tremendous conference. The subtitle for the conference, the Kingdom Come Conference, is Kingdom Citizenship. Being a kingdom citizen. What does that entail? And so Eric Metaxas will be speaking at the church. Pastor Rob Pacienza is the host of the conference and pastor of the Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church. So looking forward to that conference, and I'd love to meet you if you're in the area, willing to come to the area at the conference, March 27th through the 29th. All right. I'm going to read to you now some of the specific requirements. And this is what is posted on the New York City Sanitation Department's website for emergency snow shovelers in New York City, which is a department that is under the behest and auspices of one Islamist mayor, Zoran Mamdani. The New York City website says that any person who seeks to register as an emergency snow shoveler, okay, an emergency snow shoveler, they must provide, here are the requirements. They must provide two small photos, two small photos, sized 1 to 1.5 square inches, 2 original forms of identification, plus copies, and your social security card. Did you get 2 small photos, 1 to 1.5 square inches, 2 original forms of ID, plus copies, and your social security card? All of that is needed in order for you to register, not even for you to be hired, but in order for you to register to apply to become an emergency snow shoveler in New York City. That is what they require of you. Does anybody see the hypocrisy here? Anyone? So, oh God. An ID to shovel snow. To shovel snow. No ID to vote, though. No ID to vote. Guys, this is just another example. I mean, I pointed out the Democrat Party largely opposes the notion of voter ID, even though they're voters. Though the Democrat Party, the party as an entity, opposes it, but the voters support the measure. Upwards of 76% of the population, all across the board, support the measure. 83% of Americans now, all Americans. An overwhelming majority of Democrat voters prefer voter ID, but the party doesn't. I wonder why. Yeah, I wonder why. That is another example of what I'm saying. That demonstrates the insanity that persists. You hear it all the time. Darkness is not an affirmative force, but it does reoccupy the space that's vacated by the light. It does reoccupy the space that was vacated by the light. You know, one of the things in the Foundation Summit that I've been attending here in Greenville, South Carolina, we're still here. Zan Tyler is just, man, she's a woman small of stature, but her and her husband Joe, man, these are people, and I know they're not big name and lights kind of people, but these are people who, in my estimation, are heroes in the faith. She reflected on Ronald Reagan's quote for one part of the presentation, and this wasn't her entire presentation. But you often hear people refer to Ronald Reagan's quote that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction, right? Well, that quote goes on to say, otherwise, we'll be in a time period where we're telling our children and our children's children, and we'll reflect upon the days when in the United States of America, people were free. There was a time in the United States of America when people were free. And for so many of us, that's hard to fathom. But when you think about, following October 7th, did you see all of the colleges and universities that had protests supporting Hamas? Kind of like the watermelon earring wearer. Isn't that an interesting phenomenon? Kind of like the watermelon earring wearer. Where just at the very moment where you had a 20-something-year-old young dude who just had, an iPhone, And they had the audacity to walk around to, the quality leering centers in Minneapolis, in the Minneapolis area. And all of these places, they're getting federal tax dollars for children's daycare centers. I keep saying senators. Daycare centers and things of that nature. And you mean to tell me nobody, not one person thought about, man, I wonder how this federal money is being spent in Minnesota. Let's go take a tour around the quality leering centers. And then almost on a dime, guys, on a dime, soon after it's found that the governor is complicit, a couple $1 billion, not a couple, $8+ billion, just missing. We don't know where it is. It's gone. Subpoenas being delivered to Jacob Fry. And then the next thing you know, well, you know what? ICE is the problem in Minneapolis. Isn't that remarkable how that tends to happen? How do you reconcile the type of hypocrisy that will have a party position to where they oppose voter ID, but in order to do a job in the city, a job as a simple job like clearing snow, you got to have an ID for that. The registrants must apply an ID for that. It is a puzzling phenomenon to recognize. A quite puzzling phenomenon to recognize. Oh, wow. Did you also notice again, this goes back to the insanity that's being allowed and being welcomed as normal in our country. Did you notice how during the State of the Union address, the young lady who was murdered on the train in North Carolina, when President Trump sought to honor her memory, and you don't have people, it's not okay to honor the memory of a person who was brutally murdered, and it's all on camera and the whole country saw it. That's a problem. We don't have the humanity. We don't have the humanity to stand and guess not if partisan politics are in the way. If partisan politics are in the way, we don't have any room for humanity. And it's just a disgusting display. It's a disgusting display. But it's a predictably disgusting display. Because while I'm asking these questions, were any of you surprised by any of that? And I don't know, a lot of you like, hey, we didn't watch that. That's why we listen to you. We know you're going to watch it for us, so we don't have to listen to and watch that garbage. I get that. And I guess I signed up for that. I signed up for it. That's one of the things my wife does not like about my work. It's like, Abe, you going to watch the whole thing? The whole thing, Abe? You know. It is troublesome. It is interesting that President Trump's State of the Union was the longest State of the Union address in history. Oh, man. And the reason why I'm laughing is these people, while they knew behind the scenes, like once President Trump won re-election, you have all these people trying to come out and say, well, you do know, Mr. Joseph Robinette Biden went to sleep at 4 p.m. every day. I was like, you people were trying to tell us this man was running the White House. He's doing auto pen pardons and all of this stuff, and y'all doing all this stuff, and you're covering. And I'm not going to go back over all of these things, but these things are galling to me. Like I shared with you guys how Jake Tapper was one of the main ones. I mean, he went in on Lara Trump when she had the audacity to say that, this dude is not really, he can't really articulate his views. Is he really competent to do the job? And he went, he harpooned Lara Trump. Then he had the audacity to write a book. Talk about they deceived us. They deceived us. My concern, and I've been saying this all along, that these people who are the regressives, I call them regressive institutionalists. These are the people that populate what we refer to as the deep state. Because they were able to do this in the first Trump administration, their plan is we just saw the men's and women's U.S. hockey teams win the gold medals. They are playing goalie against anything President Trump could do legislatively. Obviously, we know there's slim majorities in the U.S. House of Representatives. There's a larger majority in the Senate, but if you can do an email or text message filibuster, you're not getting anything done in the Senate, except for the annual reconciliation package, which, thanks to the parliamentarian, tends to exclusively be financial policy, primarily financial appropriations bills and tax policies. But not much anything other than that. So what they do is use the hockey analogy. They're playing goalie, or to use the football analogy, they're just blocking, big linemen blocking, keeping anything from happening domestically. That can be an enduring change. They'll still try to, lie about it, do spins about it, about different things on the foreign policy front, but they're not really concerned with stopping in totality President Trump's foreign policy agenda, because they know, generally speaking, that while foreign policy can help an incumbent party, foreign policy alone is not going to win the day. It can help. Foreign policy can be a great help, and you can discuss it. There are ways to communicate to the American people concerning the foreign policy victories and things of that nature. But when it gets right down to it, there's going to be questions and challenges unless something changes. There are going to be objections made that will say, well, you guys said you were America first, and look at what has or has not happened in the United States of America. They're hoping, the reason why they had Abigail Spanberger to do the State of the Union address response in English, is because they want to rinse and repeat Abigail Spanberger around the country where there are either red states or purple states. They're going to try the whole thing all over again. They're going to campaign moderate, govern regressive. So that's why Spanberger was the one doing the speaking. So these midterm elections are going to be very revealing. But all of this underscores what I am saying. The intentional dumbing down of our nation, civically, economically. I'm talking about an economic literacy, constitutionally, but most important, biblically, is what has left room for this darkness to reoccupy. And if you want to reverse course, it's only going to come through proclaiming the gospel, making disciples, comprehensive disciples.